Now, you understand that the Bible has a very rich capture of similes and metaphors. The reason for this is, one, it is a way that God communicates to men, but number two, this has also been helpful because of the various transitions in languages and cultures. So many times Jesus would use similes and metaphors to communicate kingdom realities, not just parables. Are we together? So it's important that you are able to discern that some of the words you see expressed in scripture, they are not literal as they should be taken. Generally, when you study systematic theology, one of the things you learn is the principle of biblical interpretation. That means there are rules that govern interpreting scripture. Number one, for instance, is called the law of first mention. That every time you study a scripture, a thought line, you have to go to where it was first mentioned, and then that becomes the thought line that you use in interpreting that scripture everywhere it is found. Are we together? And then number two is called the law of emphasis. When the Bible stresses on certain thoughts, then it's important for you to also place a lot of seriousness on it. These are some of the principles that govern interpreting scripture. And generally, the way to interpret scripture is, number one, literal interpretation. Just a little crash course on theology. Literal interpretation. The first way to interpret scripture is not prophetic interpretation, is to address it literally. Now, if it does not make spiritual sense by addressing it literally, then you are going to have to deal with it within the context or relate it, comparing scripture with scripture to bring perspective to it. And if it still does not make sense, then you will have to buy into the lens of the Spirit to give it a prophetic interpretation.